So first we've had communicating up, then communicating to all levels. And our last speaker today is going to be talking about work with ATT&CK communicating out. We've been thrilled to see CISA's adoption of ATT&CK in many of their advisories, and are glad to have James Stanley, CISA's Chief of Product Development, joining us here today. It's always difficult to be the last speaker of the day, so please give a warm welcome to James.
Thank you to everyone in the room for sticking with me. I know it's been a long day. I really appreciate it. You guys are the warriors. And for those of you at home, live online, you are a true superhero. So I'm going to go through this pretty quick. I got 15 minutes and I'd love to have questions. Since when I do these things, it really is collaborative. It's about working with you guys to talk through not only what we do, but how you guys can help and how we can take that feedback. So a little bit about myself. I am the chief of the product development team in CISA. So we are the ones that author, develop, coordinate a lot of our cybersecurity advisories. We work with all our subject matter experts throughout the organization, as well as collaborating with external partners. And that can go from international partners, US government partners, all the way to private industry partners. So we've really been developing that over the last couple of years. And I'll start with how did we get here? And when I say personal panic, this is a little bit of my journey and how my journey has led to this team. So when I started at CISA, I started as a network analyst. And my mission was kind of go find things. They gave me about 20 different accounts to various tools. We had access to Einstein, which was our broad sensor network across federal agencies. And then the mission was relatively undefined. And so as a younger man with a family, I didn't want to lose my job. There was the panic right there. And then as I started doing things, I started getting comfortable in the environment. The curiosity started. And so a lot of what we were doing was finding anomalous activity in the sensor network, was maybe tracking, putting a snort signature into the environment and seeing hits coming back from maybe an exploited vulnerability, but we had limited context as to was it successful, was it not successful? And so that's where our research ended. And I wasn't totally okay with that. So I started writing emerging threat advisories, and those all in all were pretty simple reports. There were a couple pages, basically just detailing what I found, how I found it. So the snort signature we created for an exploited vulnerability, we would include the snort signature. We would include any IOCs that we saw attempting to exploit the vulnerability. And then we would share it with the federal community. As that picked up steam, we started to want to repeat that and grow it. And so I started developing this team inside of CISA, the product development team, who created cybersecurity advisories. They were named different things. You might have heard them as US CERT alerts, or I forget the various names they've gone through, but current day, they are CISA cybersecurity advisories. We have developed them probably over the last 4 years at a high level that you're used to today, and the development continues. So a piece of that development is leveraging the MITRE attack framework. That is the biggest thing for us. We want to repeat it. We want to emphasize that as kind of the universal language and talking through the entire attack matrix, the entire attack narrative. When we see something, when we go on site and do incident response, we want to tell you everything that we found, and we want to contextualize it so that people can take action on it. So why does it matter? I think the first key point is that we are absolutely losing the battle as far as information sharing and sharing actionable information. So the adversaries, as many of you are aware, they share everything they do. They're happy to tell, they're happy to brag about it, they share with everyone they can. We don't do the same, and I think we're getting better at it, but we are hesitant to share for a lot of reasons, right? And some of these are more logical than others. But as we have this unified language with the attack framework, I think that makes it easier to share event-driven information, because you can get rid of who the victim was, and you can share kind of just what the threat actor did and what their behaviors were. So it makes it a little bit easier to give up the details of a compromise, which sometimes organizations aren't willing to do for a lot of obvious reasons. So I wanted to highlight some of our product examples over the years. SolarWinds, everyone knows, was a massive event. This one I was really proud of in the way that we developed this, and not only talked about the TTPs leveraged in the event, but also we added that technical context. So I think someone had mentioned it prior, but there is that lacking piece where you have maybe just a table of TTPs and just a laundry list of them, but you don't necessarily know how the threat actor leveraged that specific TTP. And so adding that activity, that technical context, I think is a really important piece. And then unique detection recommendations for each one. So we responded to SolarWinds with several different publications. This is just one piece that I wanted to highlight. And then the next one is something that me personally, I'm very proud of. So earlier this year, we spoke about our red team. I believe this is the first time, definitely a US government organization, but possibly any government organization across the globe has published on what their red team did. So we had a very willing organization who accepted our red team services and then surprisingly was okay with us reporting on everything that we did. And not only was that interesting and that was a really exciting place to start, but also that was where we were the bad guy. We could take the full 100% detailed narrative of everything that we did as an organization, as a red team, and give you the full details from start to finish. And there's no other way that we could have done that without leveraging the attack framework. So these are just a couple of examples. We've written about a litany of things. We do a lot with our incident response teams when they come back with unique findings. But I just wanted to highlight these examples. And then one of my favorite pieces of feedback, and I know Scott Small was mentioned earlier, we haven't been able to meet in person, but I did pull this, that he put together this concise feedback on one of our cybersecurity advisories that I use quite a bit, and I see him in the front of the room, so thank you for providing this. This is kind of the so what, right? So when someone asks, or maybe a junior analyst will ask their SOC manager, like, you tell me to proactively try to defend against behaviors instead of just blocking IP addresses, which that's tangible, that's easy. I can take a list of 100 IP addresses and I can block them outright. But when you're telling me to proactively defend against behaviors, how do I even begin to do that? And I can tell you from coming from a SOC early in my career, I had no clue. Those were buzzwords for me. Proactive, what does that mean? Or defending behaviors, I had no idea what that meant. So this is really concise in that you can take an advisory, you can take any sort of threat intel that's mapped to attack, and you can pivot on one of these TTPs. You can use a free open source repo like Sigma, and you can pull down something that will proactively defend your environment. And so I was really excited to see this. I hope more people can understand that in this very basic context. This is kind of the so what as far as why we're using this in all of the things that we write. And I highly encourage everyone in this room to not only review those products, but review the litany of products that now leverage MITRE attacks framework. And then not only should you be reviewing this intel, but I also think, and people have said it throughout the day today in their presentations, there are a lot of times where in your own environment, you're reviewing a lot of different threat intel products. And if they're mapped to attack, that's wonderful. But there are some that are really important and impactful that maybe they're just not mapping to attack. And so there's things that you can do in your own environment. There's things that you can teach your analysts to do their own mappings. So we worked with MITRE, and we worked with Jamie, and we've worked with John Wonder, I see in the crowd. And so they really helped us push this, the best practices mapping guide. We did it in 2021. And then we just did a reboot on it not too long ago where we added ICS. We added a lot of the common mismappings. And so that is a great tool for everyone in every organization to review and do it yourself. And then doing it yourself can be complicated. It's a tough thing to dig through, and you will run into mismappings. But I think that's where, and the second thing is the decider tool. So I don't think it's been mentioned today yet, but the decider tool is something that, again, CISA worked with MITRE to create this, and it's not for the common person, but it is absolutely for the common analyst. So even if you're a junior analyst and you know very little about it, it really, you put in the context. So if you have a report and you put in the technical context almost into like a search bar function, it'll spit out the recommended TTPs that are associated with that. So I'm going to highlight that because I think that is a great tool for organizations to leverage to then start doing this themselves. And then you're building out your own kind of repository of TTPs that you're worried about, whether it's 5 separate groups or whether it's maybe some incidents, or if you have something, for initial access that you're concerned about. I think as you ingest a lot of these reports and you start doing this yourself, this gives you an easy way to kind of understand and contextualize that, especially for leadership. So that's all I got for today, but I was really hoping for some questions to kind of make this a back and forth conversation.
Yeah. I do have a question myself, but I do want to respect the opening it up to the audience. Oh, in the back first.
I know, like, if you're reporting from like a pet actor, like, you guys probably like give this thing did something, but there's only so much that you can actually share. So I'm just like, I just want to know like how much of that is true, how much of it like can you actually share versus what we actually see.
And just to repeat for the online audience, basically, are there limitations to how much can be shared? Do you kind of have to abstract things sometimes or redact, or how do you kind of balance that trade-off of being, maybe too verbose versus maybe withholding critical details and context?
Yeah, so I think part of that is just a misconception of what the government shares, and maybe 5 years ago or even 3 years ago, you were spot on. I think we've made a significant amount of progress in what we're sharing and how we're sharing it. And I can tell you from personal experience, I mentioned we talk about what our incident response team does when they go on site. We publish all of the details. There is nothing that we leave out, and the key piece of that is that we sanitize the reports to make sure it never points back to the victim. So if there's any sort of maybe unique IOC that could potentially report back to the victim, we will strip that out. But otherwise, we're not withholding any sort of threat actor behaviors. We're not withholding anything that isn't otherwise pointing back to them. That's really the only thing that we look for. Otherwise, if that's all sanitized, we share as much as we possibly can. I think that's what you're seeing with when we wrote about our red team. Again, 2 years ago, I don't think you could have ever thought of a government agency writing about their red team.
Excellent question. Oh, in the middle? Ooh. It's always a fun question. So for the online audience, is the referring to the red team report, are there future ideas, additional projects, continuations, or what's next?
Yeah, so great question. The first thing I'll say is we did, after we published that, we did join with NSA, and we did a product on the top misconfigurations. And that came from both us and NSA's red team and blue teams. So we published that just recently, within the last couple of weeks. And then I will give you a sneak peek into, yes, we absolutely plan to publish more pieces on our red team as they continue to go out and do this, as long as we get the blessing from the organization.
Great question. Check my bias towards the left and maybe skim to the right. Anything over here? Oh, over here?
I just wanted to say that I thank CISA for all the emails that I received regularly.
And just for the online audience, it was a gratitude for all the publications and emails letting us know about, I'm assuming it's known exploited vulnerabilities and all these different resources. So the question I had was, you mentioned this your own background, coming from a SOC analyst to where you are now. And one of the things we've been obsessed with is exactly like you said, that learning curve of attack. Is there any lessons learned or any big gotchas with that maturation of, hey, I see attack, I want to map to it towards actually producing products that people can reference?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me and the team as we were growing, and I think Kat mentioned it when we did the little couch session, was, what were the biggest hurdles in the beginning? And I think we were naive to any hurdles, right? We just kind of did it. We chose it to be the language, and we probably screwed up quite a bit. But you just grow with it. Yep. And I think that's as the framework grows, if you champion it, there's no problem with mismapping, right? Because, if you implement a detection for something that's mismapped, it was just kind of a waste of time. It's not going to impact your environment in a negative way. So I would just say, for anyone looking into it that might not have used it before, is just go ahead and dive in.
Yeah, that's a good point. We all do it. I wrote techniques that I can't map to you sometimes. So excellent point. So small gratitude or piece of our thanks, but thank you so much. And
thank you.
Yeah.